Friends, welcome to my channel. Today is the day 17 for our PCNSA series. So in this video, we are going to discuss about SNAT, which is nothing but source NAT. So in my previous video, I have already covered about NAT, what is NAT, how many types of NAT, how can we configure, and all those things I've already covered in my previous video. So I'll request you to please watch that video. For convenience, I'll be putting that video in I button, or you can check that particular video in description box as well. So in this video, we are going to talk about SNAT, which is source NAT, how many ways we can do source NAT in Palo Alto Firewall, differences between static NAT and PAT, right? And also I'll be explaining you what is source NAT, and we'll do a practical lab as well. So I'll request you to please watch this video till the end, because if you understand all this topic, it will be helpful for doing your own lab, for interview, as well as for production area. Like when you go into production area, or like if you're working in some companies, it will be really helpful, all these topics. And also I'll request you to please subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss any video from me. So without any further delay, let's get started. So friends, first of all, let's understand what is SNAT. SNAT is nothing but source NAT. So with the help of these two diagrams, we'll try to understand. Okay. Now, source network address translation. Okay. So if you see the IP header, you will see two addresses. Okay. One is source IP address, another is destination IP address. So right now we are talking about source NAT, right? So changing of the source IP address, right? Now, what is the reason of changing the source IP address? Okay. Let's understand with this particular diagram. Now, as you see, the source IP address. So let's say for an example, if we take this scenario, if my source, or if I initiate, if I want to connect, or this PC wants to connect to internet. So source IP address will be the private IP address, because we cannot assign, or we can assign the public IP address to the PC, but we have to pay the rent of the public IP address. Now, if in your organization, if 5,000 PCs are there, and if they are using 5,000 public IP address, you have to pay a lot of money, right, to ISP, or whoever has given you that particular range. You have to pay a decent money, right? Because for every public IP address, you have to pay some rent, right? Now, as that is not feasible, so what we will do, we'll assign a private IP address. So if you try to understand, if the private IP address wants to initiate a traffic towards internet, the source IP address will be this, and the destination IP address will be the internet or public IP address. So in that case, we have to make this source IP change to a public IP address, then only the traffic will be routable on internet. Private IP address is not routable on internet. If I say internet meaning that at ISP end, meaning that if you are going from your home towards Airtel, Jio, AT&T, Verizon, so that place you have to basically change your IP address to public IP address. You cannot go with private IP address, because that is not routable. It's not possible to route over there, right? So this is how we do the source NAT over here. Here, if you see in this particular diagram, the source IP address is getting changed to a public IP address, but your destination remains the same. Okay. It was username and network, and then it became internet. Okay, so here what we are doing, we are changing the IP address. So mostly and most common scenario you'll be seeing, the users who is going outside and connecting to internet, during that time will use source NAT. Okay, so friends, now we'll understand how many ways we can do source NAT in Palo Alto Firewall, or in general in any devices. So mostly we'll go for three ways. First is static, another is dynamic, and the last one is PAT. So in static, what happens, we will be NATing one IP address to another IP address. So I'll be changing my source IP to a public IP address. So 1 to 1. Okay. Now in dynamic, we will be having a pool. Pool means I have a range of, let's say, /24. So I'll be having a natting range which is also /24. It can be lesser, it can be higher, or it can be equals to that, right? So in dynamic NAT, we will be having a range and we will be natting to a range basically. Okay, and it is in dynamic nature. So let's say today you have got different NAT IP address, tomorrow you'll get something else, and day after tomorrow you'll also be getting different IP address, right? In PAT, what happens is PAT is actually, it's a PAT address translation. Okay, now here we are translating many IP address to one IP address. Okay, here we are actually natting the source IP address. Okay, source IP address with port mapping or port translation as well. So here we are natting the source IP address and also the port as well. So basically what happens is, let's say I have this particular range 10.0/24. So I'll be natting to a single public IP address. So we have how many IP address? 254 IP addresses. Now it will be natting to same IP address which is here. So 254 IP will get natted with single IP address. So how can we recognize? So that is the reason the ports will come into the picture. We'll do that and I'll explain you in details how it exactly happens. Okay. So friends, before we move on further, let's understand the difference between static NAT and PAT. Static NAT is basically 1 to 1 and PAT is many to 1. So as we can see, the difference between static NAT and PAT is 1 to 1 and many to 1. But we are going to understand about technical difference between static NAT and PAT. Okay. Now these two diagram will help us to understand more about it. Okay. So let's understand the static and the PAT, right? So if I'm saying static source NAT, right, and PAT, right? Static NAT is basically, we'll say as bidirectional. Bidirectional is both ways, but PAT is unidirectional, meaning that one way. Now let's prove that static NAT can work in bidirectional way and PAT works in unidirectional way. Okay. So let's understand with the help of this particular diagram and then we'll summarize things. Okay. Now in this particular diagram, as you can see, server 1 and server 2. So server 1 is having a private range of IP address, okay, which is 192.168.10.10 and 11, right? Now if they want to go to public internet, then in that case their source needs to be changed to a public IP address. Okay. Now you can see the source is getting changed to a public, which is 1 to 1 mapping. So I am natting this 10.10 to 1.10, right? Now if you try to understand in a simpler way, let's say this is my source and this is my destination. So I have created a connection with destination because I need to reach. So my source is getting to public IP address and reaching to the destination on internet. Now he is responding to that particular connection. So I've sent a SYN and he is sending me SYN ACK, right? So I have initiated the connection and I'm getting the reply. Okay. Now for an example, if destination wants to create a new connection, so this is closed. Let's say we have sent the data and we have got the data from the destination and this connection was successful. Everything works fine and it got closed after the transactions, right? Now destination wants to initiate a new session or a new connection, or he is sending a SYN traffic. Now in static NAT it is possible. Okay, let's see how. Now same way, if somebody is hitting on this particular IP address, it directly moves to this this IP address, the private IP address, and the traffic will reach to server 1. Okay, so we will have a permanent mapping of NAT from if we go for static NAT. So from source to destination and destination to source. Now you must be thinking, if we configure static NAT, both ways the traffic will be following. No, we have to have a rules, then only it allows from internet to come to internal server. So for that we have to have a security rule to allow it. Now, so in this case you can see I can initiate, like the source can initiate a new session as well as the destination can initiate. That is the reason it is called as bidirectional. Now let's understand about PAT. Now if you see this particular diagram, let's go back. If you see this particular diagram, now if I take source 101, 100 or 102, they are getting NATed to one single IP address. Okay. In this case, what happens is, whenever we require a new connection, this NAT table will be created during that time. So it is created once the session is initiated. So during that time, the NAT is created, and once the transaction happens, like the flow of in the session, whatever the negotiation, whatever the talks happen between source and destination, if everything is finished, then the connection is closed and the NAT table is also closed. But that is not the case in static NAT. It is always be there in the NAT table. Now in this case, what happens is, if this is the source and if this is the destination, now source can initiate the traffic, and if destination wants to respond to it, like if this is sending send traffic and this is sending send act traffic, which is fine. So during that time this session is created and it basically allows the return traffic. But if destination wants to initiate a new connection, it is not possible, right? Because how, if the internet PC hits this particular IP address, to whom he will deliver this traffic? He is not sure whether 200, 201 or 102, because this table is already cleared. So that is the reason only one-way traffic is possible in this. One way means that one-way traffic initiation is possible, not two ways. So whenever I'm talking about unidirectional, bidirectional, it is connection initiation. Okay. So this is the main and basic difference between a static NAT and PAT. Okay. Now if I talk about the summary of it, okay. So what exactly I'm trying to say is, if you configure static NAT, right? So the source can talk to destination and destination can talk to source. But if you configure PAT, let's rub this. If you have source and if you have destination, source can initiate traffic to destination. It can get the reply. But destination cannot initiate traffic towards source. It is not possible. So this is session 1, this is session 2, this is session 1, and this is not possible at all, right? Now, either we can set the destination. Okay. So we'll talk about in destination NAT, this can happen opposite, which we are going to talk about in destination NAT. I'm not making this complex. So right now we are focusing on source NAT. So just focus on source NAT. Okay. So in static NAT, both ways possible. PAT, one way possible. So it is unidirectional and that is bidirectional. Okay. So friends, let's move on to the lab and we'll try to do source static NAT in our practical lab. So let's move on and we'll try to do it. Okay. So as this is my topology and this is very simple topology, guys, to understand the static NAT. So this is our test PC. We'll start from here. This is our test PC. Okay. So the traffic will be moving towards switch and it reaches to Palo Alto firewall. This is Palo Alto firewall. For Palo Alto firewall, this is our LAN and this is our WAN and this is our MGMT. Okay. Now as we have understood about LAN, basically let's understand WAN. Now this is our internet connection. Internet is nothing but it's my home internet. Okay. Somehow I have configured this particular network in this particular range. Okay. as it looks like it's a public IP address. Okay, so DHCP server is configured over here. So DHCP, okay, so he'll be getting IP address from DHCP, and I have already configured in layer 3 section or layer 3 video that if you configure DHCP at layer 3, automatically a root or the default rule get added automatically. I'll be showing in the practical, guys, so don't worry about it. Okay, and he'll be getting the IP address from there, and we will be having internet connection. Now, how a static NAT works over here? So we will be NATing this particular IP address from this range. Now in real world, what exactly happens is, let's say if you have taken connection from Jio or Airtel or Tata, okay, so you have to ask them that please provide me public IP address. Okay, first they will be providing /30, so one IP will be used here and the second IP you will be used at the ISP end. So in 30 we'll be getting 2 IP address, right? But if you demand for more IP address, they'll give you /29 IP address. Now the IP which is not used, you can use it for the static NAT. So in this particular example, if you try to see this and this is already used, now you can take any of the IP address from /24. So I'll be taking 172.29.129.150. So I'll be taking this one as a static one. So I'll be changing, or I'll be NATing this one to this IP address. Okay, so let's move on to the Palo Alto dashboard and we'll see how we can configure this. So friends, let's move on to the dashboard of Palo Alto Firewall. So this is the dashboard of Palo Alto Firewall. I've already configured the interfaces. So I've configured this interface as inside with this IP address. I've configured this one as outside with this IP address, and I've configured 192.168.202.143 to management interface, right? So these are the IP addresses I have already configured. Now what I'm going to do is, step 1 we are going to do is creating NAT policy. Okay, so NAT policy, and the second is creating or configuring security policy. So these two tasks that we are going to do, and this is very much required, guys. So let me go into this. So in the network, I just wanted to show you this is configured, and I was about to tell you about this. If you go to IPv4 and if you select DHCP and this information, okay, automatically create default route pointing to default gateway provided by server. Okay, so it says that it will create a default route once he gets any DHCP default gateway. So if DHCP gives him a default gateway, he'll be creating a default route pointing to default gateway. Now let me show you here in the practical. So if you see here, what is the gateway that I've received? 259 or so 254, right? Now if you go and check the routing, you will see a default route pointing to 254. So again, you don't need to create a default route. It has already been created automatically once that particular interface goes into DHCP mode. Okay, and if you select that option. Now let's move on to the policy and let's create NAT policy. Okay, in the NAT policy, I'll just put it as SNAT static. Okay, now let's move on to original. Now original packet is how the traffic is getting entered into Palo Alto Firewall. Okay, so it will get enter from inside and it will be outside, right? Now what would be my source while entering? We have to give a private IP address, which is nothing but 192.168.10.5, or I guess 1 it is, right? 1. So I'll just make it as 1. Okay, Now we are not sure about the destination because it is going to internet, so we are not sure on that particular part. Now here we have source address translation, destination address translation. So we are concerned about doing the source address translation over here. So let's do a static way. Okay, now here we can choose any of the IP address from this particular range, but in real world you have to get it from ISP, right? Now I'm just putting the IP address 172.29.129.150. I guess this is the one. So 29.129.150. Now if you click on this bidirectional, now the other party can also initiate, like the destination can also initiate the connection, but you need a security rule. And if you are not taking this, it becomes unidirectional. So one way only communication will be happening. So let it be unidirectional. I don't want any bidirectional right now. Let's create a security policy as well. So I'll be just creating a SNAT static rule. Okay. Let's put the source as inside and also the IP address 192.168.10.1, right? And destination would be outside, and I don't have any destination IP address. Everything will be okay. Let's commit this, and while the device committing the changes, let's move on to this particular PC and let's configure the IP address over here. Okay, so let's close this, let's reopen and let's configure this. So I'll go to change adapter option, properties, IPv4. Okay, it is already configured. As you can see, it is already configured. So we'll just wait for Palo Alto to implement the change. Once it is implemented, we'll try to test the connection, how it is happening. And also one more thing that I'm going to do is I'll be connecting to Putty. We'll see how the transaction or how the translation is happening. 202143, right? Admin and the password. Let's change the front so that you guys can see. Changing the settings, fairness change, and we'll make it as 16. Okay. Now you guys will be able to see. Okay, let's open some of the URLs like Wikipedia. Okay, and let's open Twitter, let's open Reddit, let's open Facebook. So let's see whether it's working or not. Okay, while it is happening, let's try to check the show session all. Now if you see here in this, okay, now first is your source, then your source port number, then you have inside zone. It's coming from inside. This is the TCP protocol number, and it is getting translated to what we have thought to do, right? Now destination remains the same. We are not changing any destination IP address, but you see the source is getting changed to 172 range, right? So what I'm trying to say over here is that our source is getting changed, our ports are not getting changed. And if you want, guys, I can create another video and that will basically cover in destination NAT, like the opposite, the bidirectional that you want to see the proof of it, right? So that will be covered in destination NAT. Okay, so don't worry about that. Now as you can see that we have successfully configured the NAT, which is from this, and it was getting natted to 172.129.129.150. And it is very simple to configure static NAT, guys. You don't need to worry about that. Okay, now to verify, you can just go to CLI, okay, and you can execute this command, show session all, right? If you do that, you will see all the sessions in the firewall, and you can see whether the translation is happening properly or not. So friends, this is what I wanted to cover in this particular video. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I will request you to please subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss any video from now, because I'm going to post a lot of videos in upcoming months. So if you don't want to miss that, or if you like this kind of videos, please subscribe to my channel. And also, if you have any suggestions for my videos, you can reach out to me on emails, or if you want to reach out to me on Instagram, the social media handles are there in the about section. You can find it over there. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next.